Thank you, Representative Scanlon. It's really an honor to be here, and I was talking with your principal before we came to the auditorium, and I guess the school won another skiing championship. Anybody in this room who was on that team? No? Or any of the teams that have won something recently? The reason I'm asking is that we're here to talk about leadership today, and I'm going to get into that in a minute. But there's actually a strong link between kids who participate in some kind of competitive endeavor. It could be chess or checkers or skiing or rugby, and their leadership later in life. So the things you do now are building a good foundation for the kind of leader in the adult world you're going to be. And for anyone here who has stepped out and done that, congratulations, because you've taken a good step forward. I want to thank Superintendent Millie Hamner. We had several meetings on education, and it's just, I think you should be very proud of what's going on in Summit County. So thank you for letting us come back and for everything that you're doing. As you probably know, this is an incredibly exciting and important year for politics in the United States. There's an open race for the United States president, and that person is the leader of the free world and probably the most powerful person in the world. And how our country elects our leaders and how our citizens support that process is what makes the United States so great. And if you've ever read Thomas Jefferson, has anybody in here read anything by Thomas Jefferson or studied him? There you go. He really believed that it was the responsibility of every citizen to keep democracy alive in our country and to exercise your rights and responsibilities as a citizen and a voter. And what is going to happen this year is going to call on all of us to be involved. And you have a chance to have a close-up seat to history, because the Democratic National Convention is going to be in Denver. And it doesn't matter what political party you or your parents belong to, or if you've even decided yet, we're going to have a front seat to one of the great political activities in our country's history with who we nominate out of the Democratic Party. And the interesting thing will be to just see how it works and see how delegates vote. And you have all the people who are elected to go to the convention to nominate a candidate, and then you have all of these other groups, environmental groups, social groups, protesters, supporters. All these other groups will be in Denver trying to get their messages out as well. The rules are pretty simple. It's a 300 to 500 word essay. So how many typed pages would that be? 3.5? So that's not so much. And the deadline is April 15th, so other than spring break, you have a lot of time to write it. It's for high school students, 9th through 11th grade. And the questions are, looking to the future, what do you see for your country? What qualities does a leader need to take our country forward? So 2 essay writers will be selected. They'll be called the presidential winners. And I want to give you a couple of examples of leaders just to get your minds thinking about this. And even though this is a contest to be able to go to the convention, you don't have to write about political leaders. It can be, you know, who knows what leadership in your 21st century will even look like. Maybe something very different than when I was your age. So the first example I want to give you is former Secretary of State and UN Ambassador Madeleine Albright. Has anyone heard her name before? Yeah, that'd be, and you've heard it? Oh, good. She's a very smart woman. She speaks 6 languages. She teaches at Georgetown University. She was President Clinton's ambassador to the UN and Secretary of State. She believes in spreading democracy around the country, and in particular getting women involved in the democratic process in their own countries. She has created the National Democratic Institute for International Affairs. So she is teaching at Georgetown and running an institute and spreading training in the democratic process in other countries. She has a Colorado connection. Her father founded the University of Denver's Graduate School of International Studies, and where's our Denver Post News Agency? She worked at a summer job at the Denver Post. So she has a Colorado connection too. She never held elected office, but obviously she worked and volunteered and was on advisory committees and moved up the ranks to get to a point where she was an international leader, especially on solving some of the conflicts when Yugoslavia, the country, broke up. So the second example of leadership is former Colorado Governor Ralph Carr. He was a governor right around the time of World War II, and he was the governor of Colorado when the United States was attacked by Japan, and the U.S. government said that all Japanese descendants, including naturally born U.S. citizens, had to be relocated away from the coast because of the war effort. There were all sorts of governors who were saying, you can't move those people to my state, lock them up. Our Governor Carr was the only governor who stood up and said, this is not the right way to treat any American citizen. They should have their rights too. He welcomed them to Colorado. He fought for their rights. He fought to make sure they had good accommodations while they were here. He was attacked by a lot of people. He didn't back down on his belief that it didn't matter what your ethnicity was. If you're an American citizen, your rights should be enforced. And he paid a very high price for this political courage. He was never again elected to any political office, even though he kept running. So he had to have known that he was jeopardizing his political career, but he took a courageous stand. And today, he's seen as a hero for civil rights and for treating people fairly and equitably. So he's a great leader right from Colorado. And then the last leader is also someone who was never elected to political office, but who changed the world, and that's Mahatma Gandhi. He started the nonviolent civil rights movements in South Africa and his own country of India. He's known as the father of his country. He gained independence for India, and I think just as important, he inspired Nelson Mandela and Martin Luther King to lead their own nonviolent civil rights movements. So he was someone who never held elected office, and yet freed his own country and set an example for two of the great leaders from our era. So there are lots of ways to lead. There's lots of ways to have courage and conviction in your own life. And I'm hoping that you would be willing to share a couple of your thoughts right now about leaders you might write about or qualities of leadership you're thinking about to help each other generate some ideas before we wrap up this event. So any thoughts on who you might write about or qualities you might be looking for?
Listening. I think that a political leader needs to listen to his public, and that would be my first quality.
And you said that listening is something that seems to have been lost these days. Thank you for that. Leadership is happening or failing to happen all around us every day in our own communities. You can read about it in the newspaper, and we're looking forward to seeing some really interesting essays coming out of this group of people right here. So again, it's what makes a good leader. When you think about your future and the future of this country, what do you see, and what qualities does a leader need to take our country forward? Good. Well, happy writing to you. I look forward to seeing some of you at the convention. And thank you for letting us come to your school today. We appreciate the time with you.